If you accept my premise, then the next point I want to make is I think there is one simple question that those of us who care about development should be focused on, whether you're dealing with inequality or instability or the unsustainability of climate change. I was in politics for more than 30 years, and I loved every day of it. Even the bad days were wonderful. It was like peeling an onion that had no limit to the layers. But there was one problem that I see more clearly now that I'm out of it than I did when I was in. Almost every single debate focused on two questions. What are you going to do, and how much money are you going to spend on it? And if you think about the coverage of the stimulus bill, for example, what are they going to do? How much money are they going to spend on it? Republicans say, we want to spend more money on tax cuts. The Democrats said, we want to spend money on saving 1 million jobs in education and health care. And those are important questions. But very often the most important question is not even asked. How do you propose to do it? We're having this huge debate in New York City now, and indeed in the state as a whole, but it really reflects a lot on our school system here, about how much money we will continue to put into charter schools. And I will give you my bias going in. I ran in 1992 for president, promising to spread the charter school movement in America. At the time, there was one single charter school in the whole country, in Minnesota. And Minnesota and my state, Arkansas, and one or two others were the only states that even authorized them. And by the time I left, we had 2,000 and money for another 1,000. Now there are many thousands more. What's the point of all that? Well, in the beginning, the public school establishment generally supported charter schools because they saw it as a counterweight to vouchers. I wasn't for vouchers for a simple reason. I thought the federal government only contributed 6%, and by the time I left, about 8 or 9% of public school funding, and I thought that was a lot of money to concentrate on a few people. But if we formed charter schools, you would have competition and accountability, and if they didn't work, you could take them out of business. Well, now, if you look at what the results these KIPP schools have achieved all over America, by changing the culture of learning and convincing young people who come from very difficult backgrounds that they can go to Harvard, go to MIT, learn whatever they need to know, become whatever they want to be. If you look at the fact that in our charter schools in New York City, a lot of them now have an acceptance rate, you just have to apply, of under 10% because so many people want to go to them. It's obvious that this is working. They are public schools, they are publicly funded, but they have standards, unique cultures, and accountability. And yet we're having to fight to continue to expand them. Why? I think it's obvious why, but the important thing is the charter schools answered the how question. It wasn't anymore about how much money are you going to spend on education. It's how are you going to take whatever money you've got and educate kids to the highest degree. And basically, that's what my foundation does now. That's why I spend my whole life just trying to answer the how question. I try to stay out of the politics. I go into countries where I'm invited. In America, I try to work on the how question. And I've got the most amazing group of young people working for me, and some not so young. I have to give credit. 2 of my classmates, Georgetown class of '68, work in our foundation. And one of them I just left, Maureen Martaw. She runs the lab and testing part of our AIDS program. And all of you who know anything about this know that we got to have more people tested for AIDS. One of the reasons that the AIDS rate is coming up again in discrete populations in the United States is we don't do enough testing. But in very poor countries, you not just have to test, then if you give people medicine, you have to test and see if the medicine's working. And in order to do it, you need lab facilities. And it's totally impractical in really poor places to have a world-class lab everywhere. So you got to take the samples somewhere and test them, by and large. And a lot of places don't have good road networks. This is a mind-boggling problem. But Maureen reported today, we had a meeting about how our people had helped the Dominican Republic to cut the cost of lab testing by 80% and to dramatically increase it. In Ethiopia, a much bigger problem, a huge country where you can get good care in Addis Ababa, but 60% of the people live in villages of less than 1,000, and there's only 700 clinics in the whole country. We're trying to go to 3,500. It's a bigger problem. But they've cut the cost 30% there and dramatically reduced the time and dramatically increased the number of people being tested. So we tried to answer the how question. A few days ago, we had an amazing announcement here in New York that we're going to green the Empire State Building, financed by the Malcolms, the people that own the building, but our foundation worked with the Rocky Mountain Institute to help them come up with the plans. The head of our climate change initiative in New York City is Kathy Basco, class of '68. The Empire State Building was built in the heart of the Depression, 1931. We're going to cut their greenhouse gas emissions 40%. There'll be a LEEDs Gold building, unheard of for a 1931 building. And they're going to save, once we recover the investment, which will take about 5 years, almost $5 million a year in utility bills, and have a drastic reduction in their greenhouse gas emissions, be the equivalent of taking a couple thousand cars off the road every year in one building. The point is, these people, when you reach a certain point in your life, I think you want answers to the how question. They are answering the how question. And that's what I think we should all be doing.